Let me tell you something most buyers don't realize until after they move. The people who feel best about their decision are usually not the ones who pick the #1 ranked town. They're the ones who pick the town that actually fit their life. Because in a market like Central Connecticut, the difference between a town ranked #2 and #11 is often not nearly as big as people think. But the difference between a town that fits your lifestyle and the one that doesn't, that's everything. If we haven't met yet, my name's David Constant, and I'm a local real estate agent right here in Central Connecticut. And I help people relocate to Hartford and the surrounding suburbs, especially families and professionals moving from places like New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Florida. And what I see all the time is buyers coming in with a top 5 list, but not understanding that not all of these might make sense for them. So in this video, I'm breaking down 7 Hartford area towns that I think more buyers need to pay attention to in 2026. Not because they're suddenly becoming something completely different, but because more people are starting to realize what they already offer. And for each town, I'm going to walk you through a few things. What does it cost to get in? What's it actually feel like living there? And most importantly, who it's a really good fit for. Because this is not a best towns of Connecticut list. This is a which one makes sense for you conversation. And if you're thinking about relocating to Connecticut, be sure to subscribe because I drop a video every single week breaking down exactly what it's like to live here. Let's start with Wethersfield. This is one of those towns that a lot of buyers don't normally start at the top of their list, but end up looking at more seriously. From a price standpoint, Wethersfield sits in a really interesting position. You can still get into the market here in roughly the high 300s to low 400s with a median home price sitting right around $430,000. But if you're looking for something more updated, something that feels more turnkey, you're typically going to be in that $550,000 to $600,000 range. Compare that to towns like West Hartford or Glastonbury, and this is where buyers start to lean in a little bit. Because what Wethersfield offers is a lot of the same lifestyle fundamentals, just at a much more approachable price point. From a location standpoint, it's about as convenient as it gets. You're right next door to Hartford, so your commute is often very short, often under 10 minutes. You've got quick access to 91, 84, and other major routes like the Berlin Turnpike and Silestein Highway, which makes everyday errands and commuting really easy. And then there's the character piece. Old Wethersfield is a huge draw. You've got that classic New England charm, historic homes, tree-lined streets, a real sense of place. And that's something a lot of relocation buyers are specifically looking for. The schools here are also super strong, showing up well on platforms like Niche, which is another big driver for families. Now here's what I actually see happen with buyers in real life. A lot of people start their search looking at places like West Hartford or Glastonbury, but as they go through the process, they start to realize, okay, if we want this location, this kind of community, and still want to stay within our budget, we may need to look outside of those top tier price points. And that's where Wethersfield starts to click. They realize they can still get things like a strong community feel, access to everything, solid schools, and that classic Connecticut housing style, even if the house might need a few updates over time. I actually worked with a family relocating from Jersey City who landed in Wethersfield. They ended up with a home within walking distance to their local elementary school. And while it did need a few cosmetic updates, they were able to get significantly more space and completely different lifestyle compared to what they were coming from, and at a much more reasonable price point. And that's a pattern I'm seeing more and more. So who is Wethersfield really a great fit for? It's for the buyer who values community, wants that New England charm and older housing stock, cares about schools and location, and is okay putting some work into a home over time. The trade-offs? There are a few. Parts of town, especially along the Silestein Highway, can feel a little bit more commercial. And a lot of the housing stock is older, so if you're looking for brand new or fully updated across the board, this may not be the best fit. And if you're someone who wants a more rural setting with a lot of land, this is probably not where you're going to land. But for the buyer who wants location, character, and a strong sense of community without stretching into some of the higher price points nearby, Wethersfield is absolutely a town more people are starting to take seriously. Next up is Newington. And this is one of those towns that I would describe as quietly one of the most practical choices in the entire Hartford area. It's not flashy, it's not the town that always gets talked about first, but when buyers actually look at the numbers and the location, it starts to make a lot of sense. From a pricing standpoint, Newington is very approachable. You can still get into the market here in the low to mid 300s with the median home price right around $390,000. And if you're looking for something more updated, most buyers are landing in that $450,000 to $500,000 range. Another thing worth pointing out, there are a lot of condo options in Newington. So for first timers or anyone looking for a lower maintenance lifestyle, that opens up even more flexibility. Now compare it to nearby towns, especially West Hartford, and this is where Newington really starts to stand out, because you're getting very similar access, a strong community feel, and solid everyday lifestyle, but at a noticeably lower price point. From a location standpoint, Newington is incredibly central. You're about 10 to 15 minutes from Hartford. You've got really easy access to West Hartford, the Berlin Turnpike, and multiple major routes, which makes commuting and daily errands really straightforward. And the town itself has a nice rhythm to it. There's a cute Main Street area, strong sense of community, and overall it just feels like a place that's easy to live in. The schools are widely considered above average with strong sports and extracurricular programs. It's a larger school system, and like most towns, some schools are more sought after than others, but overall, it's a solid option for families. Now here's what I see happening with buyers. A lot of people start their search thinking they definitely want West Hartford. They want the restaurants, the walkability, the location. But then they look at the price tag and they start to reassess. And that's when Newington comes into the conversation. Because they realize, wait, we can still get the access, we can still get the convenience, we still get the neighborhood feel without stretching quite as far financially. And for a lot of buyers, especially first-time buyers, that's a really important realization. They start to see Newington fits their stage of life. They've got restaurants nearby, shopping close by, easy access to everything, and a neighborhood environment that feels comfortable and livable. And that combination is why Newington is getting more attention right now. It's a value play, but it's also a lifestyle play. So who's Newington really great fit for? It's for the buyer who wants to stay central, wants convenience and access, is looking for a strong entry point into the market, and wants a community feel without paying top-tier prices. The trade-offs, well, they're simple. If you're looking for a lot of land or more rural setting, it's probably not it. If you want a fully updated home across the board, you may need to stretch towards some higher end of the range or look somewhere else. And if your top priority is being in one of the absolute highest rated school districts in the area, there may be other towns that come first. But for the buyer who wants something practical, well located, and just makes sense day to day, Newington is a town more and more people are starting to take seriously. Next up is South Windsor, and this is a town that tends to come up into the conversation a little later for some buyers. But when it does, it checks a ton of boxes. From a pricing standpoint, South Windsor sits right in that mid-range for the Hartford suburbs. The median home price sits around $440,000, and if you're looking for something more updated or in one of the newer neighborhoods, you're typically in that $600,000 to $650,000 range. So it's not the cheapest option on the list, but what you're getting in return is a very specific type of lifestyle. It's a really strong fit for buyers who care deeply about schools, community, and having a little bit more space to spread out. You'll find newer housing stock here compared to towns like Wethersfield or Newington, and there are pockets of new construction that appeal to buyers who don't necessarily want to take on a big renovation project. From a location standpoint, South Windsor works especially well for certain commuters. You've got access to 84, and it's a really convenient spot for anyone working north or east of Hartford. Plus, you're close to a lot of shopping centers and everyday conveniences, which makes day-to-day life very easy. Now, here's where South Windsor really starts to make sense for some buyers. A lot of people coming to the market looking at Glastonbury. They want strong schools, a suburban feel, space, and a town that feels very family-oriented. But once they start looking at the price tag, they begin to ask questions like, is there somewhere that gives us a similar feel at a slightly more approachable number? And that's where South Windsor comes in. It offers a lot of the same fundamentals: strong community, good schools, more space, and a newer overall feel in certain areas, with a little bit of trade-off in location. But for many buyers, that trade-off is worth it. So who is South Windsor really a great fit for? It's for the buyer who prioritizes schools and community, wants a bit more space, prefers newer homes or neighborhoods, and is okay being a little farther from the core in exchange for that lifestyle. The trade-offs? If you're working west of Hartford or commuting down to New Haven, it may not be the most convenient option. If you're on a tighter budget, it can be a little harder to get into compared to towns like Newington or Wethersfield. And if you're someone who really values charm, older architecture, or that classic New England feel, it might not be your top choice. But for the buyer who wants a strong suburban environment, newer housing options, and a town that's family friendly, South Windsor is definitely one to have on your radar. Next up is Rocky Hill. And this is one of those towns that a lot of people don't initially plan on choosing. but end up really happy they did. Because Rocky Hill has a bit of a reputation. It's often a town people drive through, not necessarily a town they start their search in. But once buyers actually spend time here, they start to realize there's a lot more to it. From a pricing standpoint, Rocky Hill sits slightly above some of the earlier towns we talked about. The median home price is about $470,000, with entry-level homes right around that $400,000 mark. If you're looking for higher-end, larger homes, newer construction, or homes on a cul-de-sac, you're probably going to be in that $600,000 to $650,000 range. So in a lot of ways, it's very comparable to Wethersfield, with a slightly different feel. From a location standpoint, it's extremely convenient. Runs right along 91, which makes commuting very straightforward, whether you're going north to Hartford or south towards New Haven. And when you look at everyday living, this is where Rocky Hill really starts to stand out. You've got things like plenty of shopping, grocery stores, restaurants, and just overall convenience built right into the town. It's the kind of place where your day-to-day life is just easy. The schools here are also considered strong, and the neighborhoods are well established, which is another big draw for families. Now, one thing that separates Rocky Hill is a bit from towns like Wethersfield or Newington is the housing mix. You'll find more opportunities for newer construction, along with some larger homes in certain pockets, especially in the higher end price points. There are also quite a few condominium options, which gives buyers flexibility depending on what they're looking for. Now, here's what I see happening with buyers. A lot of people start out, they look at Wethersfield, Newington, maybe even Glastonbury. They're trying to balance things like schools, location, and price. And at some point, Rocky Hill starts to enter the conversation. And when it does, they start to realize, wait, this actually gives us a really nice balance of everything. They get those strong schools, they get the easy commuting, they get the solid neighborhoods, and a level of convenience that makes everyday life really simple. Plus, in some cases, a little more space or a newer house compared to nearby towns. So who is Rocky Hill really a great fit for? It's for the buyer who values convenience and access. They want a strong community feel, they care about schools, they're looking for a bit more elbow room than they might find in a place like Wethersfield or Newington. And the trade-offs? Well, if you're looking for something with more rural setting, with land, privacy, it's not going to be the best fit for you. And if walkability or a vibrant downtown is higher on your list, Rocky Hill may feel a little bit more spread out in Suburban. But for the buyer who wants a well-rounded, low-drama town that just works across the board, Rocky Hill is one more people need to start taking seriously. Next up is Berlin. It's strategically positioned, and even if it doesn't always get talked about that way. Because Berlin isn't flashy. It's not the town people immediately jump to. But when you really look at where it sits and how it functions, it starts to make a lot of sense. From a pricing standpoint, Berlin is very similar to some of the towns we've already talked about. You can typically get into the market here in that $350,000 to $375,000 range, with the median home price around $430,000. If you're looking for higher end, larger homes or more updated properties, you're going to be in that $600,000 to $700,000 range. So again, fairly accessible, but what makes Berlin different is not just the price, it's the positioning. From a location standpoint, Berlin is extremely well placed, especially for commuters. You're about 20 to 25 minutes from Hartford, so it's still very doable. But where Berlin really stands out is access south. If you're commuting towards New Haven or anywhere along that corridor, this becomes a very strong option. You've got direct access to major routes like the Berlin Turnpike, and you also have access to the train line, which is something that not a lot of other towns on this list can offer. And that opens up flexibility for a certain type of buyer. Now, from a lifestyle standpoint, Berlin feels a little different than some of the earlier towns. It's a little bit more spread out, a lot quieter, and a little more of a small town feel, with a lower population than places like Newington or West Hartford. The schools here are generally considered above average, which is another reason families start to take a closer look. And overall, it's just a town that feels a little bit more low-key, but still very connected. Now, here's what I see with buyers. Berlin usually isn't the first town they look at, but when they start thinking more carefully about things like their commute, their day-to-day routine, and where they actually need to be, it starts to come into the conversation, especially for buyers who want to stay connected to both the Hartford area and the New Haven area. They start to realize, wait, this location actually gives us a lot of flexibility. And at some point, it becomes less about hype and more about making a smart, strategic decision. So who is Berlin really a great fit for? It's for the buyer who wants strong schools, values a quieter, smaller town feel, needs to stay connected to both Hartford and New Haven, and is thinking carefully about commute and positioning. While the trade-offs, if you're working north or east of Hartford, it's probably not going to be the most convenient option. And if you want a more densely populated, high-energy town like West Hartford or even Newington, it may feel a little too quiet. And if walkability is high on your list, this is not going to check that box. But for the buyer who's thinking strategically about location and acquire a place to live without feeling disconnected, it's definitely one that deserves a closer look. Next up is Farmington, and this is one of the more established higher-end towns on this list. It's a place that tends to attract buyers who are a little further along in their search and are very clear in what they want. From a pricing standpoint, Farmington sits at the higher entry point than most of the towns we've talked about so far. You're typically getting into the market in the low to mid 400,000s with a median home price around 540,000. And on the higher end, especially for large homes, more premium locations, you're pushing towards and often above the $1 million mark. So this is not necessarily the value play on the list, but that's not what buyers are coming here for. Farmington attracts people who care deeply about things like schools, long-term livability, in a more refined, established suburban environment. From a location standpoint, it's very well positioned. You've got direct access to I-84 and it's a short drive into Hartford. You're also right next to West Hartford, so you can still have access to all the restaurants, shopping, and activity there while living in a slightly quieter, more residential setting. Now from a lifestyle perspective, Farmington has a really distinct feel. It leans more New England classic. You've got older, established neighborhoods, the Farmington River running right through the town, access to the Farmington Canal Trail, and a small but charming downtown area. It's not big, it's not busy, but it adds to the overall sense of place. Compared to some towns earlier on the list, Farmington feels a little bit more spread out, a little more polished, and a little more intentional. It's definitely car dependent, and most of your daily life is going to be centered west of Hartford. Now here's what I see with buyers. Farmington usually comes into the picture for people who are prioritizing schools, stability, and overall quality of life. They're often comparing it to towns like West Hartford or Avon, and what they're really trying to figure out is, where do we want to land long term? They're less focused on finding the lowest price and more focused on finding the right environment. So who is Farmington a really great fit for? It's for the buyer who prioritizes schools and long-term livability, wants a more classic New England suburban feel, values access to West Hartford and Hartford, and is comfortable at a higher price point. The trade-offs? If you're looking for a more densely populated town with a lot going on day to day, it's going to feel quiet. If you want something walkable, it's definitely not going to check that box. And if you're working with a more limited budget, there are definitely more attainable towns on the list. But for the buyer who wants a polished, established town with strong fundamentals and a really high quality of life, Farmington is one that absolutely delivers. Last up is Hebron, and this is one of the most different towns on the list. Because Hebron is not trying to compete with West Hartford, it's not trying to compete with Newington or even Farmington. It's offering a completely different lifestyle. From a price standpoint, it sits in a really interesting position. You're typically getting into the market in the upper 300s, maybe the low 400s, with a median home price right around $500,000. On the higher end, with larger homes, more land, you're probably in that $700 to $750 range. But what you're really paying for here is not just the house, it's the space. Hebron is the most rural town on this list. You've got farmland, rolling hills, winding roads, and a level of privacy that you just don't get in a lot of the other towns we've talked about. It's quieter, it's more spread out, and for the right buyer, that's the entire appeal. In a lot of ways, Hebron is a great fit for people who love the feel of South Glastonbury, but want the lifestyle with a much more agreeable price point. And for a lot of folks, that's when the light bulb goes off. From a location standpoint, Hebron works really well for certain commuters. If you're traveling along Route 2 corridor, this can actually be a very practical option. And you're also not too far from Glastonbury, so you can still access more shopping, dining, and amenities when you need them. The schools here are part of a regional system, which is common for more rural towns, and families who choose Hebron are typically very comfortable with that setup. Now, here's what I see from buyers. Hebron usually doesn't come up right away, but as people go through their search, especially if they're feeling a little crowded or priced out in more central towns, they start to expand their radius. And that's when Hebron starts to show up differently. They begin to realize things like, wait, we can get this much space, this level of privacy, this type of setting, this kind of house, and it shifts how they start to think about what they actually want. So who is Hebron really a great fit for? It's for the buyer who wants space and land, privacy. They're okay with a quieter, slower pace of life. And they prioritize lifestyle over being in the middle of everything. There are trade-offs. If you want walkability, nightlife, or a lot of activity right in your own town, it's not going to be a great fit. And if convenience, like being 5 or 10 minutes from everything, is a top priority, it's going to feel a little too far out. But for the buyer who wants to breathe and have a different day-to-day environment, it can be exactly what they're looking for. Now, when you look at all 7 of these towns together, what you start to see is that they're not all gaining attention for the same reason. Wethersfield gives you charm, Newington, practicality and value. South Windsor, schools and space. Rocky Hill, balance and convenience. Berlin, strategic positioning. Farmington, polish and long-term stability. And Hebron, space and a different lifestyle. 7 towns, 7 very different reasons someone might choose them. And none of them automatically better than the others. Because the truth is that this isn't about finding the best town. It's about finding the one that actually fits your life, your commute, your budget, your day-to-day lifestyle, and what you want your next chapter of life to look like. If you're thinking about relocating to Connecticut, whether that's in the next few months or sometime down the road, and you're trying to figure out which of these towns or others actually make sense for you, that's exactly what I help people do every single day. Not just sending lists, but helping you think it through, where you'll be working, what your lifestyle looks like, and which towns actually align with that. So if you want to talk through your specific situation, feel free to reach out anytime. My contact information and relocation guide are linked below. And if this video helped you see the area a little differently, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell for notifications. And be sure to drop a comment with any questions you have. I respond to every single one. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.